The days are hot and windy. Summer is just around the corner. For me, summer is the most challenging season. An Adelaide summer is dry and at times extremely hot. For example, during my first summer here, we had a 50-degree day. The landscapers taught me the importance of resting. On a blistering hot summer's day, the best thing to do is to slow down and take a nap if needed. But I don't do napping well. Fortunately, the birds, and in particular the lorikeets, are teaching me the art. While the heat can be challenging, there is beauty still to be observed and appreciated. Like the apples growing on the trees, and the flowers, both native and non-native. Do you have a favourite flower, Wonder Weavers? I'd love you to share in the description box below. So this week I've been thinking a lot about sleep. I've been pondering and sketching, thinking about what kind of bed I'd like to put in the bedroom of the dollhouse. And I haven't quite settled on an idea yet, but I'm close. In the meanwhile, a few months ago, my partner gave me a cradle, and I decided not to put the cradle in the dollhouse, but I thought it might be fun to do it up. And this gave me the opportunity to play with some ideas for quilts and bedding. So as you will see, Wonder Weavers, I spent quite a lot of time this week sewing by hand. Sewing by hand is something I really love to do. As I've mentioned before, it helps me come into the present. It helps me practice mindfulness. But as I was sewing this week, I also found myself reciting or remembering parts of old folk tales and myths. In particular, the ones where a young maiden was given an impossible task and the fairies came in to help her. I'm wondering if you're familiar with those stories too. And while reciting those stories, I remembered that sewing isn't just a mundane task. It can be magical too. So thinking about fairies and sewing led to a bit of an enchanted creative experiment. I took one of these, or one similar. This is a pie case, and I turned it into a cradle, and I used some of the wonderful moss I created during the Christmas creative adventure. So I hope you enjoy watching me transform something like this into something special for the fairies. With a cup of tea poured and muffins fresh out of the oven, my creative adventure begins this week. I've been felting another mouse, and my little friend needs somewhere to sleep. My lovely partner gave me this cradle, and I think it will be perfect for my little friend. I first paint the cradle with acrylic paint watered down. I'm not in love with the checkered cardstock used for the mattress, so later I paint that as well. For the mattress and pillow, I cut up an old t-shirt made of cotton, then do a couple of dyeing experiments using food colouring. I loved the purple dyed cotton the most, and I'm going to use that first to make the mattress. I measure the interior of the cradle and then use those measurements as a guide to work out how long and wide my strip of cotton needs to be. I doubled the length of my strip and then folded it over so I would only have to sew along 3 edges, and then I pin it, leaving a margin of around 1/2 centimetre. I then close 2 sides with a simple running stitch. I turn the fabric inside out and fill it with wool. I first work out how much wool I need, and then I dry felt it a little bit so it will sit nice and flat. I then fold inwards the fabric of the 3rd side and pin it. Then I close the side. The stitch I used left a visible seam. So after doing some reading, I realised the better choice would have been to use the closing stitch. This is often used to close pillows, for example. I've placed some links in the description box below if you'd like to learn more about this stitch. I then fluff up the mattress, and then I make sure it fits nice and snug in the cradle. And for decoration, I sew 2 rows of short stitches, and this will also help keep the mattress flat. I then follow similar steps when making the pillow. After folding the edges of the final side down, I try the closing stitch for the first time. So far, so good. I've been admiring Victorian children's quilts online, and as a result, I've decided I'd like to create a mini quilt. In my imagination, my little mouse likes fruit, such as apples. So with this in mind, I plan a botanical design. This is my first time making a mini quilt. In fact, any quilt. So to help me along, I drew inspiration and tips from Beautiful Botanicals by Deborah Campbell. I'm going to make my quilt from felt. With embroidery thread, I sew an S shape with my needle. This will be the stem of the design. Next, I cut small leaves from green felt. I play with their placement on the quilt. Then I cut out rough circles, and these are going to represent the apple, which in my design looks like it's been cut in half, exposing the flesh of the fruit. I pin the leaves, and then using embroidery thread, I sew a long stitch along the central line of the leaf for its main vein. I then double over green sewing thread, and using the applique stitch, I attach the leaves to the quilt. I use the same stitch to attach the apples. I cut a small rectangle of the purple dye fabric, and this will be the back of the quilt. I pin it to the felt, then I join the two sides together with the applique stitch. My dear little friend is now fast asleep in their new bed. I came across an oval-shaped pie case and found myself wondering, what could I make with it? Playing around with it, I soon realized I could make a cradle. I first fold one side of the case inward, forming a hood. I mold the outfoil until I'm happy with the shape. Next, I use the papier-mâché technique. First, tear paper into strips. I soak them in a PVA and water mixture, squeeze out the excess liquid, and then attach them to the alfoil frame. Once I've completely covered the alfoil, I put the tiny bed aside to dry. I'm going to mount the bed on a rocker. To make the rocker, I first cut out 2 arcs from cardboard. And just like with the bed, I then cover them with strips of paper that have been soaked in the PVA water mixture. Once the bed is completely dry, I then make some minor adjustments. I then apply the second layer of paper. I repeat this step 4 times in total. After the 4th layer of paper is completely dry, I lightly sand both the bed and the rocker. Next, I gesso them. And paint them. I found that I needed to apply 2 or 3 coats of paint. I also wanted the cradle to have a wood-like appearance. So the first 2 layers were dark brown, and then later I applied raw sienna. I then glue the bed to the rocker. It works! Now it is time to decorate the cradle. I glue the moss I created for the Christmas creative adventure to the interior of the cradle. If you would like to learn how I created the moss, I've placed the link to the video in the description box below. For variation in texture and colour, I sprinkle a little bit of Krafter's Korner spring grass foliage. As a finishing touch, I glue a fairy wren that I made from polymer clay. I also add a fabric leaf as a blanket. And we're done. So thank you for watching, Wonder Weavers. I am profoundly grateful for your support. I look forward to reading your stories below and learning more about your creative projects. And until the next time, Wonder Weavers, take care, stay well, and don't forget to play. Adios. Ciao. Are you going to sing the fairies a lullaby, Wren?